17 years back, Raymond Domenech was given the charge of rebuilding the French national side following the 2002 World Cup debacle in which Les Bleus crashed out of the group stages while entering the tournament as reigning champions. Not many people remember that tournament, but the French had to play 2 of the group games without the talismanic Zinedine Zidane, who arrived in Japan and Korea injured. It was expected that Domenech would steady the ship, but the national side was struggling to hold its own against the likes of Israel and Switzerland. Domenech decided to convince the likes of Claude Makélélé, Lilian Thuram and Zidane to come out of international retirement and help the national side qualify for the 2006 World Cup. That French side was quite a treat to watch, knocking out the likes of Spain, Brazil and Portugal on its way to a final against Italy. While the French lost the final on penalties, Zidane's headbutt on Matteo Materazzi remains one of the most iconic moments in World Cup history. However, an implosion was just around the corner ahead of the 2010 World Cup. The French had to rely on Thierry Henry's underhanded tactics to qualify for the tournament. They arrived in South Africa as a team that was essentially rudderless and under the guidance of a man who'd lost control of the team. Hello everyone and welcome to Goalside. Today we're going to talk about the French national side's recent controversy. Les Bleus always seem to have a good squad at major tournaments, but their ability to implode is what makes the team quite the treat to watch. We're going to discuss a little about the first time the French national side truly imploded at a tournament 11 years ago. Of course, we need to talk about the potential ego problems that have impacted the national side at the Euros this time around. Before we do that, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on your notifications. The 2010 World Cup debacle. So, as we were saying, the French were not on their game in South Africa. After a goalless draw with Uruguay in the opening game, they lost 2-0 to Mexico. During that encounter, Nicolas Anelka directed an expletive-laden tirade at the manager. The former Arsenal striker was dismissed from the team the very next day. Following that, Patrice Evra and Robert Duverne had a heated exchange that forced Domenech to restrain the team trainer. The national team players didn't like their captain's treatment and decided to return to the team bus and refused to return to practice. The French Football Federation condemned the player boycott and eventually convinced the players to return to practice. France would lose to South Africa and return home under a cloud of controversy. No one expected things to unfold the way that they did, but then again, France have always flirted with scandal every now and then. Domenech resigned from the national team and would not manage a team for the next 10 years. The latest soap opera. It wouldn't be a major tournament without some drama from the French camp, and though we had to wait for it, it appears that Euro 2020 has delivered on that front. The world champions exited the competition in the last 16 stage after a shock defeat to Switzerland. The game finished 3-3, with France losing out on penalties. Now, upsets can happen in any tournament. A team that's supposed to go all the way might stumble against a side that normally doesn't go far in tournaments. That's exactly what happened to Didier Deschamps' side against the Swiss. However, what doesn't make for good reading is how the losing team acts during certain moments of the upset. According to RMC Sport, there were quite a lot of bust-ups between the French players during the encounter. In fact, Manchester United's Paul Pogba was at the heart of it. After the Swiss scored an equaliser, the 27-year-old was seen arguing with Didier Rabiot, who wasn't pleased with his teammates' defensive efforts. Both Rabiot and Pogba were insulting one another, but it didn't stop there. There was also a lot of heat between Raphael Varane and Bayern Munich's Benjamin Pavard, with the former unhappy with the fullback's defensive efforts. Pavard's poor performance could perhaps be excused, as France unexpectedly changed formation for the game and he found himself playing at right wing back rather than at his familiar right back position. Nonetheless, the suggestion that Varane insulted Pavard does not suggest that the two were on great terms during the game, but that's not it either. At full time, Varane reportedly took Pavard's side when he criticised Pogba. The Munich man was unhappy with the Man United man's defensive contribution after he gave the ball away for the Swiss equaliser. It's a family affair. Now, we all thought that since France had been dumped out, the players would go home, stay away from football for a bit, recharge, and come back stronger next season. The players must have felt that way, but their families clearly didn't. The drama never ended and was taken over by the families of Pogba, Rabiot, and Kylian Mbappe. Mbappe had a miserable campaign. From entering the tournament as the hottest commodity in world football, the young forward became a little bit of a flop. He had the chance to end the game in extra time and missed, and then his tame penalty helped Switzerland go through to the quarter-finals. But apparently, that wasn't enough. Rabiot's mother, who seems to make every decision for the Juventus midfielder, instructed Mbappe's father to criticise his son for supposed arrogance following his poor showing. It was unfortunate, given his poor performances, that Mbappe was the one to miss the decisive penalty against Switzerland in Monday's shootout. The PSG striker was in disconsolate form walking off the pitch, but there was yet more drama in the stands as his father was again told off by Rabiot's mother. Véronique, Rabiot's mother, clearly wasn't very happy with Kylian and kept forcing Mbappe Sr. to scold his son for missing the penalty. Apparently the two had an altercation due to this issue, and Pogba's family were also rumoured to be involved. Nonetheless, you have to commend the players who decided not to hint at any discontent within the national team camp through their social media accounts. The drama within the French squad may not have reached 2010 levels at the Euros, but it's nice to know that they're still committed to maintaining their somewhat chaotic image on the biggest stages. Mbappe ego. Ahead of the tournament, there was an issue between Mbappe and veteran striker Olivier Giroud, with the latter complaining that he rarely received passes when he was in the right zone. The PSG man took an issue out of it and openly discussed his frustrations at Giroud. This prompted former player Jérôme Roten into questioning whether Deschamps had any control over the player. Mbappe had a bad tournament, and the youngster definitely needs to calm down a bit and start acting with some more humility. If that wasn't enough, it has been claimed that Mbappe is not having the best of one-on-one interactions with Antoine Griezmann, who's treated as a senior figure in the French camp. According to L'Équipe, Mbappe is jealous of Griezmann's influence in the national setup. The Barcelona man was also not too thrilled when he heard about Karim Benzema's return to the national setup, but made his peace with that. However, it's Mbappe's big ego that's irked some of the senior figures at the club, including the captain Hugo Lloris and Steve Mandanda, who've been with the national team long before people knew who Mbappe was. While Mbappe's talent can't be questioned, his attitude and growing ego could become a huge issue going forward. The player did have chances to help France at the Euros, but was unable to beat the last man or would see the chance go begging. His flick assist for Benzema's goal against Switzerland was the only assist that Mbappe had to his name, and it appears that the pressure is getting to the player while his ego continues to grow. Such issues are going to have a serious impact on his future and would also impact the national side. Hopefully, the youngster is able to see some sense and starts to act like a bit of a humble player. What the future holds for Deschamps. No one can ever say that Deschamps didn't do anything for the national side. The former World Cup winner did a great job at keeping his players away from controversy and even gave Benzema a shot at redemption. However, it appears that his time with Les Bleus could be coming to an end. The French Football Federation is unlikely to wield the axe, but it's clear that the veteran tactician is finding it hard to keep his charges away from controversy. His handling of the Mbappe-Giroud affair was not the best, and although it was a small issue, inability to act properly gives the other players a reason to take the manager for granted. Of course, Deschamps is not going to be disrespected like Domenech, but it is clear that the manager is getting very close to losing the dressing room, and once that happens, there's no going back. Therefore, in order to ensure that his legacy isn't tarnished, it would be wise of the manager to tender his resignation and let someone else take over the national team ahead of the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. Perhaps a fresh pair of eyes and some fresh ideas are what France need in the coming months. Les Bleus and Deschamps had a great run, but in order to avoid a bitter parting of the ways, the 1998 World Cup winner might consider taking some time off from football management.